This episode of Houston Tech Talks features an interview with the founder of Holly Hall Supply Co., Justin Moore. He talks about startup tips, struggles, and advice for up-and-coming entrepreneurs.
I agree with you completely. I think there's always been a mentality in Houston that you need to go elsewhere to get what you want done. And my whole thought process has always been that it's 2000, whatever have you.
Yeah.
And like everything is digital. Like you don't have to be physically present. Let's say you need a software guy. One, they have software guys in Houston that can get it done for you.
Yeah.
But let's say your software guy does need to be in in the Bay or Austin. Like you don't need to be in the same building with him, and more than likely you can't afford to have them as your full-time employee.
Right.
So you probably won't be seeing them all that much anyway because they got a 9 to 5 to hold down, or you're just one of many clients. But
yeah, for sure. Hey man, let's get right into this thing. I don't want to take too much of your time today. Just kind of kick it off and really tell us, who are you, and then why are you the best person for what you're doing? Like, why are you best prepared to be where you are?
When I heard that, saw that question, that was something that kind of took it back for a second. Like, hold on, am I the best person to be doing this? But after thinking about it for a second, I truly do believe I am. Just from kind of a background perspective, I grew up in my dad's dermatology office. He had his own skincare business, so in terms of knowing what it looks like from really from the very start to having to fill your own tubes, to all of the grunt work that goes into getting that out, to talking to suppliers, to retailers. Like I've done it all, that experience. And a lot of what inspired me to start on this journey is that for the past I guess essentially all of my adulthood, as I've still been involved with my dad and his business, it just kind of shifted in me, always telling him what he could do better. You could be doing this, you could be doing that. And once I'm a lawyer by trade, and once I decided that big corporate law wasn't what I wanted in my long-term future, I started thinking about, what direction should I turn? Should I go to in-house legal? And really decided that, like, if I never started my own business, I would regret it. It's something I've always had a passion for. And then when I try to decide, okay, well, what business is that going to be? I lean back on, kind of that old joke that I've been telling him what to do for the past 10 years and that I can do it better. So, it's time to put my money where my mouth is.
Yeah.
So I think from an experience standpoint, I have a significant edge because I already have a lot of relationships and just an overall lay of the land. That doesn't make it easy. I'm going through a lot of challenges myself, and it's definitely a lot of growth that I've had to go through, of shifting from, in what was somewhat of a autonomous area where I'm largely responsible for myself when I was at the law firm. I wasn't reporting on a daily basis to anyone, but even still, that's a very drastic change to now, not only am I having work that I need to do by myself, but I'm the one in charge of deciding what that direction is going to be.
Yeah.
And that brings challenges in and of itself. But as far as, having that experience, and then also having an experience in bringing people together, and that's something that I've been doing for a long time, whether it was throwing parties in high school, being a club promoter in college, and even throwing events for young professionals now. It's something that I've always enjoyed. So I feel like having that dual system of having the experience, but also having a knack/enjoyment for bringing people together. I think that's what poises me as the best person to be doing what I'm doing right now.
Cool. So give them your name and your company and kind of give us your elevator.
My name is Justin Moore. I'm a lifelong Houstonian. Probably 90% of my life a Holly Hall Street resident, which led to the naming of my company, Holly Hall Supply Company. And Holly Hall Supply Company develops and sells dermatologist developed skincare and facial care products, and our bread and butter is shave. That's where the vast majority of our experience lies.
Nice, nice. Thank you for that. So we'll move to the next part because, when people hear that, you started something, you're doing something, um, I would say that the external perspective is that, man, I see this guy making progress. He can't be having any challenges. He's not facing anything. So kind of talk a little bit about maybe one of your bigger challenges right now, something that you think will resonate with another entrepreneur or founder that you're having to tackle, and kind of some of the, even if you're not completely addressing it, some of the strategies you're using to approach it.
Sure. I can only speak for myself, and I imagine a lot of others fall in this category, but it's certainly not this linear path where you start here and then you just keep going up. It's going up and down. Sometimes, there's good days, there's bad days, good weeks, bad months.
Yeah.
But I'd say that singling out on one toughest is that even when you do get success, of only being able to enjoy it for the moment, because it doesn't really mean much as to what's going to happen in the future. So, for instance, we were lucky enough to be really successful in our Kickstarter launch, and was able to raise $27,000 in 30 days. And at that day, when that campaign closed, it's like, we made it. The world's our oyster. We have enough funding, to actually bring this to life. And it seems like, our message was resonating with someone. However, then you have, Harvey comes and then kicks back production 3 weeks.
Wow.
And I'm just sitting there and feeling completely helpless, because there's literally nothing I could do, to change that. So even a little bit of blow like that, and then even then contrasting that in the case of, okay, well, look, I'm worried about my business. People over here losing their lives and their livelihoods and their homes. And really in that time, going volunteer was just the best thing I could do to try to get that off of my mind, sitting around, sulking about my really minute problem in the whole scheme of things.
Right.
And then, and even more from a business perspective, once we got up and rolling, of just kind of the ups and downs. So we came out of the gate, late November, official launch. December was a great month. Went to a couple events where, as a vendor, that were beyond amazing. In my wildest imagination, I was hoping to break even, and ended up, getting a return on investment of around 4 times for one event. Nice. Contrast that to, come January, New Year's Eve celebration, excited for the year, and it's just crickets. And in my head, and I think sometimes even a little bit of success will make you ignore your past experiences.
Yeah.
Because I've had experiences in, a brand that is selling directly, and January was always a super slow month.
Yeah.
But, a little bit of success made me feel like that, and not that I was really analyzing this toughly. I think I was just riding the wave. But, thinking that, this is going to be different from all the other experiences where January is a really slow month. So it's being able to ride that roller coaster, never get too high, because a low is coming. And when the low is coming, don't let that, dominate your perspective either, because that's going to, hinder you from, trying to right the ship and bringing it back up. Yeah. And you also have to realize that you can't control everything.
Right.
So as I'm, trying to perfect my marketing mix and try to, perfect my value proposition, there's a lot of tinkering, a lot of trying to see what works, what doesn't. But I think one of the biggest thing I've learned over, kind of that whole slope is that try to make sure you always have a strategy for what you're doing, so that even if it doesn't work, you have some basis as to what you were thinking when you crafted it.
Right.
Or if it does succeed, you have some mechanism for, trying to recreate that thought process. So I'd say that's probably the biggest takeaway, what I've learned over the past, let's call it 13, 14 months.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah. Having no strategy or business model or plan can be very detrimental long term.
Well, see, the thing is that people think that because you have no strategy, it means you're going to fail. And that's not always the case. Right. So, for instance, the lesson I learned was I went to this pop-up shop, like I was saying, and it killed it. And then there wasn't really a strategy behind it.
Right.
But, I made a lot of money. Then I, kind of logically or illogically assumed that others would at least provide, some level of success, kind of like a fiend trying to chase that high.
Yeah.
And then I wasn't being strategic about the ones that I was going to. I essentially was going anywhere that I could pop up shop, and I thought that there would be a decent amount of people. And then the lesson from that is, that, every crowd is not my crowd.
Right.
And that, I need to be focused about determining, where is my crowd. It's one thing to just go places and see what happens, but that's not a strategy. And, sometimes you'll get lucky like I did on the first one. And then, sometimes, you're going to get it handed to you. So it's a lack of strategy can end in success or failure. But if it's really hard to tweak if there's no strategy behind it.
Yeah, and that's true. Like some companies, some product ideas, the consumer really takes it where they want it to go, and you're really on for the roller coaster. And it's a consumer behavior that you spend most of your time trying to understand, like, what is it that brings value to these people? Why do they connect with my product so well? And it may not have been so intentional for you in the beginning, but you're just getting traction. So it's kind of, trying to figure out a way to keep that going long term, which that can be a bit of a research and science effort to understand that.
And it's really, of course, the goal is growth and trying to, expand to as many new customers as possible.
Yeah.
But at that same time, we're still trying to get to know our existing customers as well as we can, with the thought process that, they're not the only ones that think the way that they do. So people who are similar to them, would resonate with messages, of value that our existing customers find in our products. So you're right. It's definitely the customers deciding, and the customers in the market deciding where we take things.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's cool, man. We could do a whole breakout on that piece right there, just that alone.
Most definitely.
But I kind of want to move on to this one. This is a question I had in my head for you, just in general. Definitely dealing with a different subset of funding models for companies, and based on my interest, I just wanted to understand why you chose crowdfunding, but two, with your experience in investing and just your discipline thus far, learning up and getting to where you're at, really asking the question, like, what is the difference for you of like the VC check, high growth type lane versus bootstrapping or crowdfunding in the way that you guys were able to do?
Sure. So going a little bit deeper into my background, I practiced corporate law for about 4 years, and still do so on a private basis for some clients. And a large part of that experience was in private equity, which is essentially, the sister to venture capital. Really, the main difference is the stage at which, the companies are developed before the investment occurs. So I was very familiar with the VC model, and even I'm a kind of a geek for that type of stuff. So like there's still some VC blogs that I get daily emails from that I read just for fun. It doesn't really pertain to my work very much anymore. So initially that was my thought process of going out and doing a family and friends round, and then, essentially starting myself down that VC track. However, there was a friend that I met kind of randomly. We went to Georgetown at some overlapping years, but we didn't meet there. We met during South by. I was living in Austin in law school, and he rented out my apartment as an Airbnb and noticed that I had a Georgetown degree on the wall, and we chopped it up about that for a little bit. So it was kind of cool, and we talked. We obviously knew we didn't know each other, but I think we overlapped by a couple years. And he, at the time, was working for Living Social, and when I was researching, just kind of looking at what people had done on Kickstarter, I saw a successful Kickstarter that they did really well. And I saw the name, and the name, immediately jumped off the page to me. I hadn't probably talked to him in maybe, 2 years. And I reached out to him because obviously he was doing really well, and I had been seeing ads for his company. I just had no idea it was his company. And so he was nice enough to, give me some FaceTime.
Oh, wow.
And he was actually the one that recommended that I go the crowdfunding route for a couple reasons. One, that it would, help you validate, what you're trying to do before you go and, take money from your friends and family.
Right.
Two, that it helped, kind of get you into the role of already marketing, of already selling, of already trying to see what customers are looking for. So kind of a little bit of a crash course of, what day-to-day business would eventually end up looking like. And I thought it was great advice, and it definitely ended up being the case for me.
Yeah.
I think if the way that I would consider, VC versus bootstrapping or crowdfunding is how much money do you need?
Right.
If you know that it's going to take, significant capital investment of doing what you're doing, and it's an idea that you really believe in, and you already feel like it's a concept that doesn't, need to be proven via crowdfunding, then, certainly going down the VC route would probably be the best way. My approach has been, and I haven't ruled out going, down the VC route at some point. However, I have, a vision for the way that I want things to be. And although I'm very flexible in the direction that takes me, me personally, and this is simply a personal decision, is that I would like to have kind of a guide and a roadmap that, is proven with something, in real life in terms of following, in terms of engagement, in terms of sales, that when, I go and get that money from friends and family and then, VCs down the line, that, I'm not trying to find a roadmap. I have the roadmap.
Right.
This is the capital that I need in order to go down that road. However, I've already shown that, essentially I'm on the right track. Mitigate the risk a little bit for anyone that I would be taking money from, as well as, protecting the value of my equity. Obviously, if you're, taking money before the concept is proven, before there's, any widgets in house, that equity is going to go for a lot less premium than it would once you kind of have things figured out and rolling.
Yeah, that's interesting. You said it in that way, which, I fathomed that, but I really didn't deep dive into that mechanism of crowdfunding being your proof of concept directly with your market to understand everything you need to before you fully and completely launch the product. And that's a different approach, because I've seen in the same case, companies generated a prototype, they went and got VC capital, and they kind of got their wings before they learned how to fly. So that's an interesting takeaway. Just a gem in itself to think of it as, if your company really requires that type of validation with its market, that could potentially be an avenue for someone who's trying to test that out.
Yeah, and there are several. Now, this is something that they probably never advertise in their, Kickstarter commercial, but there are several companies that do already have VC funding that are launching products on Kickstarter or Indiegogo. So
wow.
It's not really, it doesn't have to be an either or. It certainly can be a hybrid of the two, whether you're looking for a successful Kickstarter campaign to be what you pitch to a VC, or whether, if you already have that VC capital, a way to essentially still dip your toe in the water and test your hypothesis for the see what the market says, because that's one thing that I've learned. So I used to hear, I'm sure you have as well, kind of the adage in entrepreneurship of fail fast.
Yeah.
Go to get out there, fail fast, see what's going to happen, fail fast. And that didn't really ring true to me until I realized that, all of this time that I spent planning and waiting until the Kickstarter campaign was actually launched, that until the market had its say, none of that meant anything. It means nothing. All of my assumptions, they mean nothing. My beliefs, my value proposition, until the market signs off and says you got it right, it means nothing. So when you spend 3, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months trying to make something perfect, and your very first, like your MVP may have been the one that the market liked even more than the one that you tinkered with for 4 or 5 months.
Right.
But you'll never know that until you bring it to market. So I didn't really understand that. I understand that now.
So getting in the face of your market quickly can help you to adjust in a way to solidify your product sooner.
Definitely, and it's definitely and I've talked about this with other people that are interested in starting their own business, because now that I do, a lot of people get my opinions on what they're doing, and my message to them, and it's a message that I had trouble taking myself, was that don't wait until it's perfect. So like, if you're going to start blogging about the subject matter for your company that you have not already created, start now. Start developing that community and building that community and that rapport and that expert, that perception that you're an expert in your field. Waiting until everything is perfect is one, it's going to cost you a lot more money. You might run out before it becomes perfect, but also you're not hearing what the market says.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one for sure. All right, cool. So the next one, we're really prideful about Houston, and there's a really large place in our hearts in trying to figure out how we can have the experience at home that we've had other places, and the excitement around the culture to bring about new influence and products and just innovativeness that it hasn't seen before. So I had this question for you around, in your mind, just based on what you've seen, maybe this could be more of a kind of recent timeline, what you've experienced. What do you envision Houston in your head? If you could paint Houston how you want to paint it, what would your Houston look like in 2025? Which is not that far from now.
It's really not. That's how you know we're getting old, when 7 years away is like, oh, that's not that far. That's like that was all of law school and undergrad.
Yeah.
But no, I love Houston. I've left a few times, but I always end up coming back. It's a city that has a lot to offer, but I think hinting at what you were getting at is that there's still a lot of undeveloped potential. I think one is erasing the mindset that you have to go to these other places to be successful. That you have to, if you're going to do something tech, then you have to be in one of the 2 tech hubs that Houston usually refers to, which being Austin, just because of close proximity, and the Bay. There's a lot of other cities out there that have developed their own scenes that have nothing to do with either of those two. And, they have no more resources, and you could even argue that they have less resources than Houston does. So I think from a mindset place, I would say that it's changing the attitude that being in, you have to go somewhere else to make it. It's 2018. You can, the same way me and you were having this conversation, not in person, I could be having this conversation with a developer in India, in China, a manufacturer in Italy or South Korea. So the idea that you have to be in these epicenters that do a very great job of marketing themselves as epicenters is just, that's something ideologically that we need to get past. In terms of kind of the physical, print of the city, I'd like to see investments in mass transit, because I think that's one of the things that really still separates us from the much larger cities. But that's just kind of a personal thing. I'll never leave the 610 loop, so it's not that big of a deal to me.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's definitely a huge part of it. I imagine that if I asked this question to a number of people, I would get comparable answers, but I don't think I would get the same. I think it's important to hear your perspective, especially being from Houston, living in Houston, and making ways to be back in Houston as a priority for yourself. It really shows like what we believe, a bit of the arrogance that we have as well about our hometown, and then two, just a knowledge of the capabilities that exist that maybe haven't been faceted together to form something. So, that's definitely part of it. And I don't know if any of our representatives are watching this, but
I think a large part is that there's a lot of successful people in Houston that aren't necessarily in like the sexiest of industries.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But that's something that is a very untapped resource, I believe, because I think even in those, I think you could get even better experience in those unsexy industries because it's a lot more about the meat and bones of the actual business than it is about, essentially, public perception about what you're doing. But I think building bridges, to those types of folks who really do have, the real experience, whether it be, from the medical industry or from oil and gas or from shipping, kind of the titan industries of this town, that there's a lot of that business experience that's transferable no matter what you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
I won't put that onus on the people who are already successful and already killing it to reach out to the ones like myself who are trying to be like them someday.
Yeah.
But I would put it on, the people who are in my shoes of reaching out to those types of folks and, essentially saying, hey, I'm starting a business in this town. I know it may not be exactly, where you have had your success, but I think there's some corollaries and some things that I think that, I could learn from you. Like, can I take you out for coffee and kind of tell you about my idea and see what you think and get some honest feedback?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think developing those types of connections, because essentially what I've learned of living in Austin and even in New York when I was there was that it's really just all about connections and having a network. So when you talk about places like Austin and, the Bay Area and New York, is that when you go, they have certain communities. And when you talk about those communities, everybody knows each other. Everybody's providing resources to each other. So that's something that we need to develop for ourselves. And, on the, inexperienced end, you have, people like myself who are really just getting into it. And then, kind of the higher end of, the folks who have been killing it for years and are willing to share that knowledge with the ones that come behind them.
Yeah, man. So don't want to take too much of your time, but this is my last one. It's around, out of what you've learned in this process, what is, and I have people give me a lot of different answers for this. One person said, "Don't be a founder," and you're like, go a different road. But I really want to truly.
It's really not.
It's not. But I really want to know kind of what is the. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't use that framing. What is some advice that you would give someone starting a company or trying to get a product idea flushed out?
Sure, and I touched on it a little bit, but don't wait. There's very creative ways that you can get market feedback without actually having a prototype or an MVP. One of the examples given to me was that you could start a launch page for a product that won't even be named what you're naming it, and may not necessarily be exactly your fully, developed idea. But, put a launch page out there and put a little bit of Google Ads money behind it and see what type of engagement can, you drive from something as simple as that. Is this an idea that people gravitate towards? If you're finding that, when you're looking at the analytics that people come to the site and, the bounce rate is really high, then try tweaking the landing page, or like maybe that's why they're not sticking around for content. Right. If you can't get them to come at all, then maybe you should reassess either the way that you're positioning the idea or that maybe you're not bringing it to the right market. But just start analyzing all of those. They seem like very abstract things, but you can, will people like my product is a very abstract question. Try to transfer those into more direct questions of, how long will people stay if they click on it and come to this site off of a Google ad? Can I get that person to give me their email address? if someone comes to your site and is willing to give your email address, they're probably pretty interested in what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a quick way to understand, whether you're hitting the mark. And I'm just using that as an example. I mean, I'm sure there's many ways, but my thing is don't sit and wait, for something to become perfect. Test the waters. If you're not liking the results that you see, tweak, test the waters, and just keep in the forefront of your mind that the only opinion that matters is the market's. Yours don't matter, mine don't matter. What the market says is the only thing that matters.
Yes. For sure. Well, yeah, man. Give us your information where people can find out about you and your product.
Sure. It's the website is hollyhallsupply.com. All of our social tags are Holly Hall Supply. That's Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And my personal Twitter is JMO713 if you want to reach out to me personally and have any questions about my story, my journey. Happy to talk to anybody that's trying to get their business off the ground or talk shop with anyone who's currently in the trenches like myself.
Nice, man. We appreciate it, and thank you for your time today. And,
thanks for having me.
One of many. We look forward to having you talk at a Houston Tech Talks event in the near future. But we definitely appreciate your time and being candid and sharing a lot of this information because we think it's really valuable for people to hear and to see.
Love what y'all are doing. Keep it up.
Yeah, man. All right. Take care. Right. Appreciate it.